Lucy, remember when we used to all get to be outraged by stuff that was in fact outrageous, but somehow less overtly stupid, despite being also terrible and stupid? It was all pretty stupid.
Well, Allison's saying this the day after the following 3 news articles all happen in one day. A local Florida sheriff is using the abuse history of children to profile them as future criminals. That's story number 1. UCLA is reimbursing an accidental paycheck deduction that they made their employees with, instead of US currency, Amazon gift cards. And the piece de resistance that Kyle Rittenhouse was bonded out by the MyPillow guy. The dumbest, worst thing that's ever happened.
You can't make this the cold open, because then that person will be upset again.
Yeah, that person who
gave us a nice review. But they did have to know about the horrors of the world. And the whole promise of this podcast is that we distract you from knowing about the dystopia that we
maybe I'll put this
are hurtling towards. Inexorably.
Should I put this dead in the middle?
Yeah, really trick
Just
them.
a hard cut away from the catalog of the day to talk about this instead, and then a hard cut back.
Maybe what we should do is start putting like a little, I mean, I think I proposed this before, that there should be like a content warning, some kind of a musical cue.
We are an explicit podcast.
No, I mean a musical cue that lets people know we're shifting from talking about
nice
miscellaneous
things.
Bullshit to talking about the horrors of the world. And we give them a little musical cue, and then we say something terrible, and then we do a little cue to transition out of that and back into talking about tomatoes or whatever.
It's seedy business. It's seedy business.
Well, for all the bad stuff that we just mentioned, there's a lot of good stuff going on in the world, too. Like all the people who got COVID this week. Ben Carson and Rick Scott and Chuck Grassley, who it's hard to see how he doesn't die.
You can't put any. This cannot be in the podcast.
And Don Jr.
You can't put any of this in the podcast. You can put in the podcast, though.
Let me tell you something.
That Ben Carson, medical doctor.
Oh, yeah.
decided to get his COVID treatment medical advice from the MyPillow guy.
I think this episode comes out the day after Thanksgiving.
Happy American Thanksgiving.
Happy American Thanksgiving. When bellies will be full and people have just started to incubate the COVID that they've gotten from their family members.
Well...
What do you think our bellies will be full with?
Well, sweet potatoes for one thing.
Yeah, but not the sweet potatoes from our garden. We'll talk about that in a minute. What's on the menu, though?
It's not exactly sure at this point. I mean, there's sort of a general concept, and that general concept is a bunch of grains and fruits and nuts cooked. I mean, usually I plan these things a little more.
The centerpiece of our Thanksgiving dinner tends to be fondue baked in a pumpkin, the traditional centerpiece for a dinner.
Yeah.
So we have a pumpkin. We mass buy at Trader Joe's, because it's a seasonal item, once a year, like 20 boxes of their cheap box fondue, which is pretty good and easy. We often bake that into a pumpkin. Sometimes we'll doctor it up with other cheeses or wine or something like that.
I'm actually not convinced we've ever done the pumpkin with the boxed fondue.
Is that true?
Yeah, this I think would be the first time we've done that.
Huh.
Because what we do is scoop the flesh out of the pumpkin.
Yeah.
And then put it back in the pumpkin, alternating layers of pumpkin with grated cheese, heavy cream, wine, and spices.
Do we top it with bread? Is that my memory?
So the original recipe for this calls for using cubes of slightly stale bread inside the pumpkin to soak up the liquid, the watery. I think
we found that isn't super necessary.
Yeah, it just dilutes the intense bomb of pumpkin
Cheese.
flavoring and cheese with some additional bread, which is unnecessary.
Yeah.
So we haven't done that in the last couple of years.
But I can't stress enough that this is delicious.
Yeah, it's great.
Highly recommend it if you don't have a big bird on your table.
And then I don't know exactly what the fruit, nut, grain, vegetable blend is, but I think the goal is just for life to not be that complicated this year.
Yeah. Well,
So-
since, in the past, Thanksgiving's always been our big have people over day where we've been cooking for dozens of people, but obviously that is not happening now. So trying to cook a reasonable amount of food that we won't leave to spoil with our inability to eat it all. Something we did last year, now that we're in Florida, that I think we're going to do again, though, is to make besides the fondue, a big centerpiece of our meal to be a big, nice cut of fish, because you can get those here. Last year we got,
I think it was a local red snapper.
that we just cooked in a bunch of butter, and it was absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
I'd be excited to eat something like that again.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't actually been into the fishmonger there.
Oh, yeah. Who knows if it's open or...
No, it's open. It's busy all the time, which I assume means it's full of unmasked people.
Right.
I assume it's aggressively anti-mask. So we'll have to do a little investigation.
Yeah.
I haven't been in there in almost a year, I guess.
Yeah.
Any place like that hasn't just opened a window and started selling their items through the window is missing an opportunity. But that means they don't want your business if you would like them to be wearing masks.
It's not like fish haven't classically been sold outside.
Yeah.
Seems like a fine option.
What do you think about apricots and pistachios versus cranberries and hazelnuts in our grain?
So they
medley?
both sound delicious. The latter sounds more classically Thanksgiving-y.
Yeah.
But the first one sounds like something we'd be more likely to eat at a non-Thanksgiving moment. That seems like more like us food.
Well, we eat a lot of hazelnuts.
That's true. I guess maybe I'd say the latter just to try to bring some classic flavor into although we are making cranberry sauce.
Yes, for sure. Cranberry sauce is my favorite Thanksgiving food.
Yeah.
Of the basic things that people would recognize as a traditional Thanksgiving
we've
food.
always had that no matter what else we've done. Well,
I usually make a huge batch and then we
put it on everything
months.
and eat it with everything. It's so good, and I love that the sauce that you make. I still find that I would like a can of the jelly that when you remove it from the can maintains the ridges of the can imprinted in the jelly. I think that's good. It's an entirely different food for me. I don't consider it to be the same food as the cranberry sauce you make, but I like to have both of them. All right, so you mentioned sweet potatoes. Would you like to speak of what is in the garden?
Then let us cultivate our garden. It's the only way to make life endurable.
What's in the garden?
Well, it's hard to say whether there are, in a technical sense, some sweet potatoes in the garden.
Yeah, we posted on Instagram our miraculous. Well, the first sweet potato you checked was a little runt, and I put a picture of that up on Instagram, but then you found a full-sized one immediately afterwards.
A small, full-sized one.
Yeah, we ate it.
Yeah, it was
We
good.
put it in our bodies, and it was good.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll get some more of those.
The thing is, they've been in the ground now for at least 5 months. I don't know how long this has been happening.
Yeah.
What month is it? I keep thinking that it's August. I've thought that it was August for a long time now, but it's mid-November.
Well, because it's sort of temperature-wise here has never really changed from the late summer.
Yeah, they've been in the ground for much longer than anyone would say a sweet potato
Well, I
takes
saw
to grow.
like 90 to 180 days is what I have seen for sweet potatoes. So 6 months as the outer bounds is something that is not unusual.
Yeah, well, we're getting up there.
We are. But anyway, I hope we get some more of those. It was nice.
Yeah, I don't know if our yard is too dark or the soil is too poor. They're facing a real uphill battle.
They are. Also facing a literal uphill battle, I guess, or the chayote, which are climbing the tree and back.
Yeah, I mean, the first vine that started climbing that tree looked gorgeous for a while, and then I don't know if it wasn't getting enough water or what happened, but the part of the vine that had looked the best sort of died back and looked bad, but there are additional vines coming out of the same plant now going in several other directions.
Huh.
So I'm planning to just sort of let it keep doing whatever it wants. It would be nice if we had more soil back there.
Yeah. I mean, this is both the chayote and the sweet potatoes are planted in soil we brought in.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Not in our sand yard.
Yeah. I mean, it's a mix of compost and then potting soil, basically.
Yeah. Speaking of the compost, we have 2 compost bins.
Yeah.
We have one on the side of the house that's for like dry, large pieces of wood and cardboard and stuff.
It's sort of a leaf litter pile /
Sure.
a place to contain extra brown materials for the
Right.
compost.
It's not like a fully working compost pile in and of itself. But
Yeah.
what's the state of our main compost?
I mean, it's composting. It's
Yeah.
doing stuff. Back when I finally built those garden beds, I did kind of a semi lasagna bed style back there.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. On the
Yeah.
pod.
So I used a lot of cardboard that had been sort of weathering out in the brown compost pile.
Right.
And I emptied out a lot of the partially composted material from our main compost pile and layered that together to form part of the garden bed.
Every once in a while, I'll take out our compost and back there and find that our compost bin, which has a lid that it's not like the lid locks, but there's like a sort of a soft latch on it. When I'll find that the lid has been removed. And I think that the raccoon I'm afraid of is using its little fingers to undo the latch and get into our bin.
I believe that lid is pretty raccoon proofed, but something.
Do you think it's a human's little fingers?
I think it's a human,
Do you
yeah.
think it's our neighbor?
Well, if it's not you and it's not me.
It's either our neighbor or a very dexterous raccoon.
Not just dexterous, though, strong. Because
I'm the one who encountered that raccoon, and I think it's capable of that.
so raccoons are big and strong and scary.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for affirming my fear of that raccoon.
But the way that was not a big raccoon, that was a juvenile raccoon that you were
All right.
terrified of. But anyway, the thing is, you have to be able to turn a doorknob. You have to be able to turn. So the motion to undo the latch is a
Right.
doorknob turning, and there are 2 of them, and they're much harder to turn than a normal doorknob. So you need to be pretty strong and then able to do the human doorknob turning motion, which very few non-humans
Right.
can do effectively. And the raccoon would have to be standing on the lid, and then it would have to turn one knob and then turn the other knob, then get off the lid and push the lid up and off of the bin.
Wow. Maybe it's evolving right in front of our eyes. Yeah, if you hear some recreational moaning going on, it is Allison's back has not been great, unfortunately. She's really toughing it out, though.
I mean, you shouldn't leave any moaning in the podcast.
Maybe just one moan so people can know what it's like. That sort of counts as a moan, but it's one of disappointment and not pain. All right, well, we're doing another retro catalog this week. I believe so far we have done a catalog from 1920. We did a 100 years ago catalog We did a catalog from 1950, one from 1960, and now we are doing a catalog from 1970. So this is a 50 years ago catalog, if you can believe that 1970 is 50 years ago. And this is the Bolgiano seed catalog, company I did not know existed. Like many of these older companies that have gone under, I learned about it for the first time by seeing this catalog. Bolgiano's was a company out of Baltimore. They're not very Googleable, actually. It's not like they have a Wikipedia page. There's not a lot of information about them online. The richest repository of information is the horticultural history blogspot page I found, which I will certainly link to. Looks like a woman named Emma Crabe did a little history of them. So it looks like they were founded in 1818 by Joseph Bolgiano. They became Bolgiano and Sons. There was the son and father became estranged. The partnership was dissolved. I guess they had some sort of issue with creditors. On the Blogspot page, they have a little ad from 1919, so the sort of 100 years of being in business. This little ad with a quote by Charles Bolgiano that reads, "In no line of human endeavor is the accumulated experience acquired with the passing years of more value than in the growing of and distributing of seeds." Seems, I guess, true. Sort of elegantly worded. This is neither here nor there, but the other thing from this Blogspot page is that they do have Charles Bolgiano's obituary. The obituary it's sort of startling. Charles Bolgiano, president of J. Bolgiano and Sons, seedsman of Baltimore, Maryland, was found dead, seated in his automobile in the garage at the rear of his home, 7:15 a.m., November 19th. The body was found by his son, Charles Alfred Bolgiano, who said when he opened the garage doors, the place was filled with black smoke and gas from the engine of the machine, which was running. The hood over the engine was open, and his father, he said, was on the front seat directly beyond the steering wheel. They said it was their opinion that death was caused by heart failure. So we don't need to get into that too much, but...
yes, natural causes.
Classically natural causes. Also in the obituary, it notes that Mr. Bolgiano was high in Masonic circles, of which he was a 32nd degree member. He was connected with a Scottish Rite and Mystic Shrine. So, time to formulate some conspiracy theories about his untimely death at the age of 42. Have you looked through this catalog at all?
No, I'm just looking at it for the first time, but I'm very excited that they have right near the front, they have a page of vegetables of exceptional merit.
Yeah, indeed they do. It's like their best of page. I thought that our CD short would be reading their vegetables of exceptional merit. So you can look forward to that this coming Friday. So all their vegetables that we'll be reading about today are of standard merit.
The lesser vegetables, I see.
Tell me what you think of their cover. I mean, it's in a lot of ways, a 1970s cover.
Yeah, that's some real 70s design.
How do you describe their font choice?
Erratic.
Yeah, definitely. Erratic at best. It's sort of, to me, there's one of these things is not like the other situation where they have a bunch of flowers. So the latter half of their catalog, incidentally, is flowers. They have a marigold and a petunia. They also have some vegetables on the front. They have a pepper. I think their presentation of the Triumph cucumber is revolting.
It's very 1970s.
Yeah.
Instead of showing a picture of the cucumber, they're showing a very 70s appetizer. I'm not sure what to call it. The cucumber has been peeled and then sliced into coins, but then the coins have been cut into a fringed, like a cog shape.
Yeah.
And then there's a blanched peeled tomato that has been sectioned, and then there are cogs of cucumber alternately arranged with the tomato wedges It's meant to be a fancy salad, but it just looks so 1970.
It looks disgusting to me. If this whole thing, the peeled blanched tomato, with the wedged serrated cucumbers sort of fucked into it, was all set in a jello mold, that would not be surprising to me. It has that vibe to it.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a core of mayonnaise or something inside there?
Absolutely. There's no overhead shot of the middle, but I bet that a big glob of mayonnaise plays a component in this dish. How could it not?
Yeah, so there's only one picture of a vegetable plant on the front page in that case, right? There's food, there's flowers, and then there's one picture of a pepper.
Right. Yeah, that's right. A thing that I love about this catalog is the unique headers of each page in it once you start getting into the descriptions. And this was, I want to say it was true about the Steckler catalog we read too, where like some of the pages had fun headings to them, but I think they alternated between like 2 or 3 of them. But here, do you want, starting on page 4 and going from there, do you want to read some of the headers for each page?
Get that vegetable garden going early and keep it working.
Which sounds like something that you would say, I don't know, on RuPaul's Drag Race as much. Keep it working.
You better work.
Better work.
Take your daily dozen with a hoe. There's nothing like it.
Maybe that would be said on RuPaul's Drag Race as well. I don't know.
The owner of a good garden and his family really live.
That was so good. That's on the top of the cabbage page, incidentally. That's how you know you're really living your best life. Giving your family their best life with cabbage.
The vitamins in carrots aid eyesight.
Sure.
You've never eaten sweet corn until you've raised your own.
Yeah, no doubt.
Eating your homegrown vegetables is dining deluxe.
These, my mother made that cookbook with the family recipes in it.
Sure.
And each recipe she gave a little tagline to. These read like those taglines to me, which are very cute.
Fresh, crisp lettuce, one of the best of all green vegetables.
Yeah.
Look through this book and try some of the strangers. Parsnips dug in midwinter have better flavor.
Yeah. Some of them are like sort of specific to what's on the page, but some of them are absolutely not, like the next one.
It's true. You are healthy, wealthy, and wise in your own garden. I really like this next one.
Yeah.
Have you tried the fine new squash? That's more David Lynch than RuPaul. But
Yeah. Uh-huh.
open spring with your own rhubarb. Herbs make food healthful and tasty.
That gets us to the end of the vegetables, but I think those are really great. There's also right at the beginning where there's a page that says when to plant various vegetables. And that page is titled Vegetable Seeds That Succeed, which you may remember, I believe, is a tagline from the Steckler catalog, or one of those 2 earlier ones we looked at. So I guess that wasn't a trademarked phrase. Seeds that succeed is too good to pass up on for any of these catalogs from this era. Another very 70s thing about it to me is how hard it goes on lawns and lawn care. Like they have a million different lawn seeds, a million different like lawn mowers, and how to make your enormous green watering intensive lawn the envy of your suburban neighborhood seems to be a big component of this.
Yeah, for sure.
You want to read some descriptions?
Yeah, I was just staring into space, marveling at the idea that the ability to spend a bunch of time, money, and energy preparing a manicured green lawn to make your neighbors jealous, that would be seen as a good use of your precious few days of life on this earth. That's rough.
I mean, in all like cartoons or sitcoms of this era, people are constantly in competition with their next door neighbors on lawn care.
Yeah, it's a trope.
So that messaging was really being pushed.
Yeah.
What a shame.
What percentage of your life do you think is a worthy investment in having a greener lawn than your neighbor?
As I've said before, I like desperately wish and try for the deadest possible lawn. I mean, if you can't have just ground covering that stays the same length, which would be ideal, if you live in a rental like we do that has some semblance of a lawn, what I want it to be is as dead as possible, so I do not have to mow it ever.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, well, let's read something.
Where would you like to start?
I don't know, I'm open-minded. What about if we did some tomatoes? I suggest that because as I looked at the history of this company and even some of their older catalogs, it seems like they're always really pushing a weird hybrid tomato that they've made. Like that's been a real focus for them. So the tomatoes here are divided into red varieties, yellow varieties, pink varieties, small fruited varieties, and hybrid varieties. It's interesting to me that under red varieties, there's a Campbell's and a Heinz, which I think probably suggests just what it sounds like. Do you want to read those?
Let's read those for sure. Campbell's number 1327, certified. Medium type vine. Fruits rich color, averaging 3 to 5 ounces. Resistant to cracking and to verticillium and fusarium wilts. Sets fruit under unfavorable conditions. Heinz 1350, certified. Resistant to verticillium and fusarium wilt. Crack resistant. Fruits are medium size, slightly flattened, of pleasing color and good flavor. Ideal for canning or home garden.
So those seem to, I'm scanning their other descriptions, and those seem to be maybe the only two that specifically emphasize resistance to verticillium and fusarium wilts. So maybe that's a specifically desired trait for canning and processing and stuff like that.
I think it's more for mass growing.
There's the Rutgers. Fruits are medium to large, globe-shaped. Flesh very firm and red. Especially desirable for canning and juice. Vigorous and more disease-resistant than some. It's a damning with faint praise situation. Yeah, tomato juice is a thing that, of course, you use that these days in one specific cocktail, and I can't think of any other situation. But I feel like in the 70s, everyone was drinking tomato juice for some reason. V8, remember that?
Yes, my grandfather loved V8.
Really?
Yeah, we were not a family that drank cocktails. He did not have Bloody Marys. Maybe he never had one in his life, for all I know. But he kept miniature cans of V8 juice in a mini fridge in his den where he would spend all his time. He had a mini fridge that had like batteries and film and cans of V8 juice. Like,
oh wow, that's so evocative. I mean, and the way that some men keep a mini fridge in their garage of beer, they go to retire to the garage to drink. Classically, he has a V8 mini fridge. Have you ever had it?
Yeah, I've had it.
It's very salty. It's almost too salty to bear, I find. Like, it makes sense in a Bloody Mary, I guess, but I can't imagine drinking it recreationally. If you need like electrolytes real quick, probably it's pretty good.
Yeah, I bet that's true. I think the way it has often been marketed is like, you can get all your vegetables in one. Just drink a glass of this juice and then you never have to eat a vegetable.
I see.
The number of servings of vegetables that it technically contains has always been its selling point.
Sure. Well, I mean, you can juice anything into a small amount of material, I guess.
I mean, if you presume that fiber is an unimportant
Important part.
component of vegetables.
Right.
Yeah, he also had big glass mugs with handles that he kept in the little freezer compartment to frost.
So we can have a frosty glass of V8.
So he could have a frosty glass of root beer.
Oh, wow. Well, that sounds great.
Yeah. I don't know that anyone frosts a mug for root beer.
I think it's adorable. There's the another 70s reference here. There's the Tiny Tim tomato, which is a miniature red tomato that can be grown as a colorful small pot plant. I don't know if he got any royalties from that, but he definitely should have.
I'm intrigued that they've created this whole category for yellow varieties, but it only has one entry. Sunray. Fruits are large, bright golden orange, globular. Do you think it's globular or globular?
I think it's, I mean, I've always said globular for
I
my
have
whole life.
too, but when describing something as a tomato as globular just sounds gross to me. All right. Globular, thick-walled with few seeds.
They do sell the Burpee's Big Boy, which has a registered trademark sign next to it. Fruit smooth, deep globe shape, firm scarlet red skin, thick wall with bright red meaty flesh of fine flavor. It's a registered trademark of W. Atlee Burpee Company. Incidentally, I was gonna read a description of Bolgiano's tomato that, much like Burpee doesn't appear to continue to sell their old tomatoes that they bred, Bolgiano's by the 1970s doesn't appear to sell their older tomatoes either. But Victory Seeds is always a great place to go for old varieties of things if they have a really wide range of stuff. And they do have a Bolgiano's tomato, which is their extremely early IXL tomato. But I want to read their description of this Bolgiano's tomato. So this is from Victory Seeds. So first, it's the Victory Seed description of it. The IXL tomato has very productive regular leaf vines. The fruits are flattened, globe-shaped, red in color, firm, and exhibiting a wide variation in size, from 4 to 12 ounces on each plant. Whereas many early tomato varieties tend to be quite plain tasting, IXL fruits are surprisingly flavorful. IXL was reportedly developed from a single plant selection of Chalk's early jewel. Bolgiano and Son of Baltimore, Maryland began sending out seed samples to select experimental organizations, which goes unexplained, but I'm very interested in what, quote, select experimental organizations receive these seeds. But they sent out seed samples to select experimental organizations and various commercial growers. They officially introduced Bolgiano's extremely early IXL tomato as a new 1905 variety in the 1905 seed catalog. Now, here is the Bolgiano's description from their 1905 catalog. In Market Gardener's field tests, IXL tomato proved to be a week to 10 days earlier than Sparks Earliana, with an abundance of fruit larger and more prolific than Chalk's jewel. In fact, any number of specimens could be found as large as the Great BB, Bolgiano's best, tomato. It has a little more vine and leaves than the Wealthy tomato, thus protecting the blossoms from being easily knocked off by heavy rains or winds, also protecting the fruits from being sunburned or scalded. The IXL tomato is without a single exception the leading extremely early tomato, and while many of the most experienced tomato growers tell us we cannot say too much in favor of the excellent early tomato, there are many who have not grown it yet. To them we say, do not experiment with it, but plant your entire early crop in IXL tomato. Your crop will net you big returns. We stake our reputation on IXL tomatoes. Below, we give in concise form the most striking features of this tomato. Number 1. This is in all caps. Earliest, largest, absolutely smooth tomato on Earth. A week earlier than the Earliana and as large as the Great BB, which again means Bolgiano's best. Number 2, a bright, beautiful red color. Number 3, vines are a perfect mass of large, smooth fruit, a single plant yielding 1/2 bushel. Number 4, fruit is extremely early, enormously abundant, and ripens all at once. Number 5, vines are very compact and can be placed 2 feet apart in 3-foot rows. Number 6, as an extremely early prolific stem setter, it is a wonder. Number 7, the absence of unnecessary leaves permits all the fruit to ripen so remarkably early. Number 8, it is almost like finding money to grow the IXL tomato. Number 9, the largest growers tell us we cannot say too much in favor of the IXL tomato. Which I've got to say, I wish all descriptions still had that level of not only information, but extreme hyperbole. It's a real treat.
Well, I decided to do a search for the IXL tomato to learn what I could about it. And one of the top hits I got is actually someone describing their experience ordering the IXL tomato seeds from the USDA's research program. Like the USDA
cool.
will supply seeds to you if you can make a case that you will be using them for breeding or research purposes.
Yeah.
And that was a tomato variety that they were able to receive from the USDA.
Very cool.
So maybe that's what they meant by saying they were sending it to select research organizations. Maybe they gave it to the USDA and allowed them to share it in perpetuity. I don't know.
Oh, maybe, yeah. That makes sense. I guess the USDA is a, quote, select experimental organization.
Well, I guess the USDA is in charge of deciding who is a
Who
select.
is that? Yeah, sure.
All right. So besides the single yellow variety, there are 2 pink varieties. Oxheart, rosy pink, heart-shaped fruits up to 2 pounds each. Ponderosa, the largest of all.
Oh,
Few seeds and sweet, mild flesh.
nice. Pictured on this page, the older the catalog, the fewer the images, typically for obvious reasons. They do have a big picture of the Wonder Boy tomato. Just another great name. Do you want to read that description?
I sure do. Wonder Boy, F1 hybrid. Fruits extra large, round, firm, meaty, smooth, of excellent flavor and quality.
What do you think they're trying to get across with the picture of the Wonder Boy that they put in there? I think it's smoothness. There's nothing for scale, so you can't tell how big it is. But it does look like the skin looks unbelievably smooth in the image.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what they want you to take away. It just looks like a regular tomato. It looks like a grocery store tomato.
Yeah. But those, I think, were valued, especially during this era.
It's a black and white photo also.
It is.
So it's hard to tell.
It's hard to tell much about it.
Yeah.
But it looks unblemished and perfectly smooth.
Something that I think is interesting in this catalog is there's a whole category of items where they won't tell you how much they cost.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. Field corn, clovers, hay, pasture mixtures, soybeans, cowpeas, and small grains are all right for prices. You've got this catalog in your hands, but now what you have to do is write them a letter and ask them.
Send it via U.S. postage and wait for your response.
Yeah. So how much does Hickory King corn cost? You write them in a letter and then they send you a letter back, I assume, that tells you how much.
I mean, is it like on a menu when you order the lobster and it says market pricing? Like, is it that it's so variable that they can't characterize a whole year of what it could possibly, that it might not cost the same thing in February as it does in August?
Yeah, I mean, I think that must be true, but it's very strange.
That's their method, yeah.
It's hard to imagine. Nowadays, if you've got a website, you can have dynamic pricing
Sure.
and adjust the price as often as you like. But the idea that what people had to do at some point was get a catalog in the mail, then write to the company to ask them, so I've been looking at your catalog and I think I'd like to buy something, but could you now tell me how much it costs?
Yeah, I mean, the delay. I mean, so much of marketing these days is about making someone do an impulse purchase, and having to write and receive a letter and then send another letter to then get your thing seems like it puts some barriers in the way of making a purchase.
And I mean, obviously, these things are all meant for farmers who are going to be growing a lot of whatever it is. So it's more like getting a quote for, a business expense. But the idea... I mean, this is
1970. You can call them on the telephone.
They don't want you to.
They don't want you to.
They want you to write them.
Yeah. All right. And then one quick hit before we go. I feel like this should become a segment, but because I'm on so many email lists, I mean, the podcast is on so many email lists, we just get... Like every day I get 30 emails from seed companies, but Burpee has really been pushing via email their new tomatoes. So on the topic of tomatoes, they have a tomato that is called the medium rare tomato.
I also got that email.
Yeah. Like it's so gross. Like they're really going in as hard as possible on the meat analogs. But this, their description is, sink your teeth into the medium rare's earthy fragrance and rich, meaty flavor. Pair a thick, juicy slice of our deeply shouldered beef steak with medium rare steak for the sandwich of your summertime dreams. Rarely do they actually just explicitly say, eat this with a steak also. This tomato is like a steak, but you should eat it with a real medium rare steak. Medium rare's translucent pink color lets more light into the huge 16 to 18 ounce fruits. Jesus. Adding a natural sparkle to the savory, smoky flavor. Beginning midsummer, one single 6 to 7 foot vine commences its seasonal payload of 18 to 20 virtuoso tomatoes. What a fucking terrible sentence that is. Fuck that. Ugh.
I'm sorry, the idea that sunlight getting deeper into the tomato is somehow...
Gives it a better flavor. That's sort of like the Trump light will cure COVID philosophy there.
Like that cannot be right. That does not sound correct to me.
We'll have to look into that. Beginning midsummer, one single 6 to 7 foot vine commences its seasonal payload of 18 to 20 virtuoso tomatoes.
Yikes.
Yuck.
Commences.
Yuck at the copy, not even yuck at the tomato.
Yeah, it's not even the concept, but the idea, first of all, commences a payload. One
what
does
the
not.
Fuck is, yeah.
Come on.
Come on, guys. Proven performer, tolerates challenging weather conditions, unusual earliness, ideal for northern U.S. So that's the medium rare hybrid. It's received a 3.1 out of 5 stars on average review on the Burpee site. Okay, if you're so inclined, you can elect to follow us on Twitter at @CDBusiness or on Instagram at CDBusinessPod. You can email us at cdbusinesspod@gmail.com. If you'd like us to talk about a particular catalog, let us know. If you leave us an iTunes review, we'll be delighted to read it. And you should eat all the vegetables that most closely resemble bloody steak.
Or bombs, I guess.
I guess so, yeah. Eat your vegetables.
We're all just doing the best we can.
Speak for yourself.
It's CD business. It's CD business. Boring talk about seeds, CD talk between boys. Mind-numbing chatter about ovals and spores. We'll dig a ditch and one bone and split the difference. It's CD business. It's CD